We had just moved into a new house, and after my husband and I returned to work, we decided to hire a nanny for our infant daughter. She seemed polite, experienced, and professional, and at first everything appeared normal. The first few days were uneventful, but then strange things began to happen. One evening, I woke to the sound of soft footsteps upstairs. I assumed it was the nanny checking on the baby, but when I went to the nursery, she was sitting on the floor, rocking the crib gently, her eyes fixed on the corner of the room as if watching something invisible. I called her name, and she slowly turned toward me, her face blank, her voice low and cold. "She likes to watch you." I froze, my heart pounding, realizing she wasn't referring to the baby at all. That night, I stayed up listening, and the soft hum of her voice continued, almost like chanting, blending with whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The next morning, I noticed my daughter giggling at empty corners and pointing at things I couldn't see, while the nanny smiled politely and said, "She's just playing with her friend." Over the following nights, the whispers and movement escalated. Doors opened by themselves, toys were arranged in strange, deliberate patterns, and the baby monitor captured faint laughter, not my daughter's, echoing through the nursery. One night, I watched from the monitor as the nanny knelt in the corner, whispering to someone, or something, my eyes straining to see, but only shadows flickered at the edges of the crib. I fired her immediately, but even after she left, the house didn't feel the same. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the humming again, soft and deliberate, or catch glimpses of shadows moving along the nursery walls. I know she left something behind, something that refuses to leave, and every time I walk past that room, I feel the weight of her eyes, watching, waiting, and I am reminded that some presences don't leave when you ask them to. I had just returned to work after my maternity leave, and my husband and I decided to hire a nanny for our 6-month-old daughter, hoping for some relief from the exhaustion of balancing work and motherhood. And when we met her, she seemed perfect, soft-spoken, patient, polite, and almost unnervingly calm. The kind of person who smiled in a way that made you instantly trust her, with a presence so quiet it filled the room. And for the first few days, everything was normal. She fed the baby on time, changed her diapers carefully, sang soft lullabies, and I even found myself relaxing, believing that our daughter was in safe hands, until the first night something strange happened that I couldn't explain. When I came home earlier than usual, walking past the nursery, and I noticed a quietness so heavy it pressed against my chest, as if the air itself were thickening. And when I opened the door, my stomach dropped because the crib was empty. My daughter wasn't in it, and my heart began to race as I scanned the room, only to see the nanny kneeling in the corner, humming softly, staring at the wall with an intensity that felt unnatural, not holding the baby, not touching the crib, just watching. And when I demanded, trembling, "Where's my daughter?" she didn't answer. And then my eyes fell on the mirror across the room, and what I saw made my blood run cold. My daughter was in the crib, sleeping peacefully, but the nanny's reflection was twisted, grinning in a way that stretched her face impossibly wide, while her real face remained calm and blank. And as she slowly turned her head to look at me, whispering softly, "She's sleeping," I felt my body freeze, unable to move or speak, trapped in a terror that didn't make sense. That night, I didn't sleep, listening to the soft, deliberate hum echoing through the house, imagining shadows moving. And when I returned to the nursery to check again, the nanny was kneeling in the same corner, rocking slightly, whispering words I couldn't hear, her eyes fixed not on the baby, but on something invisible to me. And over the next few nights, the occurrences escalated. My daughter would point and giggle at empty corners. Toys shifted themselves across the floor into strange patterns. Doors opened by themselves, and sometimes the baby monitor captured faint, high-pitched laughter that wasn't hers. I tried confronting the nanny, but she smiled politely, always calm, claiming my daughter was playing with her friend. And eventually, I installed cameras to understand what was happening, only to be horrified by the footage, which showed her kneeling in the corner, whispering, swaying in a way that seemed almost ritualistic, sometimes vanishing completely, while faint shadowy figures appeared at the edges of the crib, moving in ways that made no sense. and the soft laughter persisted, echoing through the room as though inviting someone else in. I fired her immediately, and she left politely, smiling, as if nothing had happened. But the terror didn't end, because even years later, I can still feel her presence in the nursery, shadows moving slightly where they shouldn't, the faint hum echoing when the house is empty, and the chilling awareness that she didn't just leave, that she left something behind, something that watches, something that waits. And every time I pass the crib, I can feel it, still observing my daughter, still whispering, still unseen, and I know with a certainty that I cannot escape, no matter how much time passes, that whatever she brought into our home has never truly left. We thought hiring a nanny for our 2-year-old daughter would make life easier, especially since both my husband and I were working long hours. But from the very first day she arrived, I felt an odd chill in the air, a subtle heaviness that I couldn't explain, like the house itself was holding its breath. And although she appeared perfect at first, quiet, meticulous, and unnervingly attentive, always watching my daughter with an almost unnatural patience, I began noticing strange things almost immediately. Toys would be arranged in precise circles on the nursery floor. Small scratches appeared along the walls near the crib that I was certain weren't there before, and my daughter began giggling and talking to corners of the room where no one was, calling some invisible presence her friend, while the nanny merely smiled softly, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond my vision. The first night that truly unsettled me, I came home earlier than usual, drawn by an instinct I couldn't explain, and found her kneeling in the corner of the nursery, humming softly in a low, repetitive tune that sounded almost like a chant. Her eyes locked on the empty corner, while my daughter lay in the crib, staring intently at the same spot, utterly motionless yet clearly engaged with something unseen. And when I asked the nanny what she was doing, she didn't answer, only whispered reverently, "She likes to watch," and tilted her head toward me, her eyes empty, unreadable, as if I weren't even there. Over the following days and nights, the occurrences escalated. The nursery door would slowly creak open by itself. Lights flickered, although all the bulbs were fine. Soft whispers floated through the baby monitor. When the room was empty, my daughter began repeating words she hadn't learned from us, saying things like, "She's here again," or "Don't wake her," while pointing at shadows that moved along the walls and corners as though alive. And whenever I tried to approach the crib or investigate, the nanny would kneel quietly in the corner, her hands hovering in midair, guiding invisible movements with subtle gestures, all the while humming that same low, deliberate tune, her calm expression never changing despite the growing horror in the room. One night, unable to endure the fear any longer, I stayed awake and watched the nursery through the monitor, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Shapes, dark and almost human, flickered at the edges of the crib, moving closer to my daughter, while the nanny, kneeling in the corner, gestured toward them, her lips moving silently in words I couldn't hear, swaying slightly as if conducting some ritual I couldn't understand. And when I burst into the room to stop her, she turned slowly toward me, smiling that same impossible smile, whispering, "It's time," and vanished instantly, leaving the room completely empty except for my daughter sleeping in the crib, as though nothing had happened. I fired her the next morning, but the terror didn't leave. The shadows didn't vanish. And even now, years later, I sometimes hear the soft, deliberate humming from the corners of the nursery, feel the subtle weight of unseen eyes watching my daughter sleep, notice the toys mysteriously rearranged when I return home, and I know with an awful certainty that the nanny didn't simply leave. She left something behind, something patient, something that waits, lingering in the corners, in the shadows, in the hum of the night. And every time I walk past that nursery, I feel it there, still observing, still whispering, and I realize with a chill that it will never leave, that the house is no longer entirely ours, and that the nanny, or whatever she brought with her, is still inside, unseen but present, patient and watching, waiting for the right moment